The Sports Desk at the Columbus Dispatch presents the BuckeyeXtra Basketball Podcast. With your host, Ohio State basketball beat writer Adam Jardy.
Brandon Matisse says, "Give me the rock." Here it goes. Up and away. Slam jam bam. And now he does a little dance.
Now, the BuckeyeXtra Basketball Podcast.
Hello, everyone. This is Adam Jardy from the Columbus Dispatch. Today is Wednesday, August 19th, 2026. And it's my official duty to welcome you into episode 573 of the BuckeyeXtra Men's Basketball Podcast. Welcome to Jubilation City. Welcome to schedule release day. I'm here a little while removed from the news that we have Ohio State's full non-conference schedule. Now, we don't have a Big Ten schedule. We won't have that for a couple more weeks, honestly. And we don't have tip times. We don't have broadcast information on essentially any of these games, but we do know which 12 teams the Ohio State men's basketball team will be playing outside of Big Ten play this season. That's right, 12. We know what days those games will take place, and we can start drawing some thoughts and some conclusions on what the schedule looks like now that we have dates in front of us. We can start planning our fall, people. Now that we can actually throw some dates on a calendar, and I can see if there's any concerts I've got to miss, and all that fun stuff, and fit it in all around the kids' sports schedules as well. So we're gonna sorry, Patrick. So we're gonna go over the schedule. I'm gonna share my immediate thoughts, my immediate impressions upon looking at all these dates, and also run down. We're getting more recruiting visits that are popping up here. More players in the 2027 class that Ohio State is recruiting are going to start, or have started announcing when they're visiting, and we'll run down what we know as of this point. Still going to be an interesting 2027 recruiting class situation. We'll see how many guys Ohio State ultimately wants to take, if that number is higher than 0. Certainly there's a couple of high-level game-changing type of players out there that you make a spot for, but I guess it is worth repeating that as the roster stands right now, and subject to change, Ohio State could return everybody but Jimmy Williams next year. So we'll see. Nobody does that anymore, and obviously rosters are so fluid, but in the era of the transfer portal and name, image, and likeness, large freshman recruiting classes, unless they can come in and make an immediate impact, I think are going to become less and less frequent when you're Ohio State. So having said all that, we will run down some visitors here as we get a little bit further into the podcast. And we're going to break down this non-conference schedule here. No news yet on the roster, which still stands at 14. Certainly, Christoph Tilley is still out there. And no decisions on any front there. The longer this draws out, the more I think interesting it becomes, because he made a solid impression at Oklahoma City in the NBA Summer League, and the Thunder don't report for preseason camp until about a month, and it would stand to reason that he will be invited to that and have a opportunity there if he's not fully eligible to play at Ohio State and decides to go that route and they find a spot for him. So that's kind of where that still stands. Again, the players that are the 14 guys that are on the roster right now, they have to report by this Sunday, the 23rd. How many players are ultimately on the roster when the season starts? We don't know that yet. And could Christoph Tilley be one of them? Yes. Could he just as easily not be? Yes. Could there be another player still that joins the fray? Yes. It's still in flux. It's so maybe at some point it will not be unusual for us to be entering the end of August and not have a completed full roster, but still to this point, that's just a weird thing for me. I'm very used to, like we're all used to by this point, knowing who's going to be on the roster for the upcoming season. Honestly, this probably isn't, like, from a fan perspective. I hear a lot from people about how hard it is to keep track of who goes where. And that gets even more difficult, I would imagine, when players are joining after the summer. I've written something about every player on this roster during the summer. So even if the season rolls around and you don't know a whole lot about Vuk Lazarevich, you've at least read something about him or some things about him because we've covered him at dispatch.com. But guys that will just join the roster this late, and this is across the sport, just less time to get to know them, tell their stories, understand who they are, get a feel for how they fit into things, and then boom, season starts. So just I guess it's a little bit of a rambling thought on the overall state of college basketball rosters. But yes, Ohio State has 14 players on the roster. The plan is for 14 players to arrive by August 23rd. Players then have roughly 2 weeks from the start of classes. If they're going to play, they will have to be enrolled in classes by that point. There is still actually an academic component to all this, which I think we all do forget about at times. But stay tuned. We'll see how this continues to shake out. No news to report yet. Now, I do remind you that you can subscribe to the podcast on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you enjoy your favorite podcasts. If you subscribe, you'll automatically get the newest ones just as soon as our man Patrick Flaherty, the Podfather, can grab them and publish them for us. While you're subscribing or downloading, please leave a review, please click 5 stars, and please consider telling a friend. Thanks to all of you who've taken the time to do all those things. All right, so let's run down this non-conference schedule here, because like I said, we've got teams, we've got dates. The only time that we have is we know the Kansas game as part of the CBS Sports Classic. Otherwise, and that game obviously on CBS, but otherwise, you've got Ohio State playing Cincinnati in an October 7th exhibition game down in Mason, Ohio. 3:00 tip. The Buckeyes will be hosting Butler in an exhibition game on October 25th. There will be a secret scrimmage against Louisville at some point in there as well, because teams can now do 3 of these exhibition events. And then it all kicks off for real. Some of this we already knew. Like, we knew the season was going to start against BYU on November 2nd. That's a Monday. Ohio State will go out to Salt Lake City and play a semi-neutral court game against BYU on November 2nd. Buckeyes then return home for consecutive home games. The Buckeyes will begin the home slate against Youngstown State on Friday, November 6th. Youngstown State does feature Walnut Ridge product Dom Akins, Central Ohio native, who was teammates with Jimmy Williams at Duquesne last year. 3 days later, Ohio State hosts Marshall on Monday, November 9th. Then it's off to UConn, November 13th, for a Friday night game in Stores. Then begins the longest homestand of the season. Ohio State will play Prairie View A&M on Monday, November 16th, UMBC on Thursday, November 19th, Vanderbilt on Tuesday, November 24th. That is the week of the Michigan game. And then Lipscomb on Sunday, November 29th. Now, there's a 13-day break in the schedule where I imagine we will see 1 or 2 Big Ten games inserted, as we historically have now that the Big Ten has expanded to 20 games. But the next game on the schedule right now, December 12th, a Saturday at Notre Dame, finishing out that home-and-home series. Then is back home to play Stony Brook on December 15th. That's a Tuesday. Then it's to New York City to go play Kansas in the CBS Sports Classic on December 19th. And then the non-conference slate concludes with a Tuesday, December 22nd game against Mississippi Valley State. And I've got some interesting numbers on that team here in a moment. So that's how it shakes out. Ohio State has 12 non-conference games, 5 against high major teams: BYU, UConn, Vandy, Notre Dame, Kansas. The Buckeyes will play 8 home games in the non-conference. 7 of those are bye games against mid to low major competition, and one of them will be the marquee home game, the game against Vanderbilt. The bulk of this schedule, or at least the bulk of the intriguing part of this schedule, all takes place outside of Columbus. You got BYU in Salt Lake City, at UConn, at Notre Dame, and then Kansas in New York City. So a couple of things immediately jump out to me. And the first thing is that you look back on last year's schedule, and Ohio State began by playing, how many games in a row was it? Ohio State played his first 6 games in a row, or his first 6 games of the season at home. And it was a stretch where you're saying, okay, the only real test was a home game against Notre Dame, but the other 5 were all bye games. And that all led into the road game against Pitt on Black Friday that the Panthers won 67-66. I'm sure you all remember how that went. But Ohio State, didn't have like that true like gut check type of test necessarily in the early going last year. Obviously, Notre Dame gave the Buckeyes a run, and that was a 1-point game. But that was the only game that even slightly raised the pulse when it came to Ohio State's early season schedule. That is not the case this year, because you look at it, and certainly opening with a marquee game against BYU, that is of note. Going to UConn on November 13th. That's 2 of the first 4 games of the season away from Columbus in road or nearly road environments. And so by the time we get to the middle of November, Ohio State will already have 2 significant tests under its belt, as opposed to last season where we were waiting till basically the end of the month to figure that out. By the time Ohio State played Pitt last season, Ohio State this season will have played BYU in Salt Lake City, at UConn, and Vandy at home. Whereas in that same stretch last year, the only game of note was the home game against Notre Dame. So there's going to be more in the way of early tests for Ohio State. And then when you start looking a little bit ahead here, like I said, we don't have a Big Ten schedule yet, but it stands to reason Ohio State's going to play 2 Big Ten games between November 29th at home against Lipscomb and December 12th at Notre Dame. That's a 13-day break in the schedule. Yes, there will be, I imagine, finals in there, but that's generally where you see the Big Ten schedule a home game and an away game for every team. So I think it's probably safe to guess that that's what we're going to get. Ohio State's going to have a home game and a road game in league play between Lipscomb and Notre Dame. So if we assume that, and then you also look at it, the last non-conference game is December 22nd. That's a Tuesday. It's 3 days before Christmas. There will certainly be a break around that holiday. But then we have seen the Big Ten schedule games late in December. Sometimes you see maybe a team will have like a full week off. Maybe not. Maybe the Buckeyes will end up with a Big Ten game at the end of December. Once they get through Mississippi Valley State, they will play 18 straight games against Big Ten foes. There's no Valentine's Day game in Nashville against Virginia like we saw last season. It will be 18 straight Big Ten games once they get through the game against Mississippi Valley State on December 22nd. So, having said that, you look at December and you're talking about playing maybe 7 games, and 5 of them would be high major competition. That's 2 Big Ten games at Notre Dame, Kansas and CBS in Madison Square Garden, and then 1 other potential Big Ten game maybe by the end of the month. Or maybe Ohio State just has a break in between Christmas and New Year's. Like that, teams also do that. There's varying strategies about how you schedule when you're building things out in between the holidays there, and trying to make sure your team doesn't lose its edge, but also you don't want to get picked off because it's a holiday season. Like there's a lot that does go into that. But Ohio State, this strikes me as there's no like long stretch for complacency here, really, when you look at this non-conference, because you play BYU, you get 2 bye games. Then you go to UConn, then you get 2 bye games, then you play Vandy, then you get 1 bye game, and then you could have 3 straight high major games. Home for a bye game, go play Kansas. Home for a bye game, all Big Ten from here on out. So there's no real stretch like we saw last season where it's just like, okay, well, they just beat Purdue Fort Wayne by almost 40 points, and now they're playing Appy State, and they're going to win that one by 22. Like there won't be a stretch like that this season. They're going to have to be more on their toes more frequently as they play their way here through this non-conference. Now, my initial thought when I started looking at like the KenPom rankings for this schedule and looking at last year, I thought to myself, like there's only one team in these 7 bye games that finished outside the top 282 at KenPom. There's only one There's only one team in the 300s as far as last year's KenPom rankings, and that is Mississippi Valley State, which is turns out the worst team in the history of KenPom. This team, KenPom does program ratings, and it averages everything over all the years that it's been around, and this team is dead last. 365 out of 365. It has finished dead last multiple times in the last couple of years. The numbers are pretty bad, frankly, when it comes to they've got a fun nickname, the Delta Devils. Okay, they finished last at KenPom in 3 of the last 4 seasons and 4 of the last 6. Now they play in the Southwestern Athletic Conference. These teams have to play crazy non-conference schedules just to make their budgets work. It's a tough deal. So this isn't like a laugh at them, look down at them. Like it's a tough living. And honestly, it's one of the things that I wonder sometimes, like, it just feels like there's too many teams in Division I. Like, this is probably an example of it. So the Delta Devils have won 1 non-conference game against a Division I opponent in the last 4 seasons. Ohio State has played them once. It was in the 1992 NCAA tournament, and Ohio State won that game. But this is as low as it gets on KenPom. Otherwise, the teams on Ohio State's schedule, from a mid-major standpoint, are all firmly in the 200s and generally higher in the 200s than lower. Youngstown State was 213th last year. Marshall 209. Prairie View A&M 281. UMBC was 187 and made the NCAA tournament, went 24-9. Lipscomb was 200. Stony Brook was 229, and then Mississippi Valley State bringing up the rear at 365. Now, when you look at KenPom doesn't have projections yet for this upcoming season, but BartTorvik.com does. So here's where these teams are. Here's where Ohio State's non-conference sits, or each opponent sits in the preseason projections over at Torvik. BYU is 38, Youngstown State 256, Marshall 283, UConn 11, Prairie View A&M 296, UBMC 259, Vandy 24, Lipscomb 260, Notre Dame 83, Stony Brook 231, Kansas 10, and Mississippi Valley State 364th. It's not a super attractive home slate, and you do look at like the attendance last season, and you look at how 4 of Ohio State's 6 bye games brought in fewer than 10,000 fans, and in those 6 bye games, Ohio State averaged 9,023 fans. The Appalachian State game on November 11th was the second lowest attendance for a regular season game in the history of the Schottenstein Center, 7,938. Beat out the number 1 game by like 15 or 20 fans. Like, it was really close. So my initial reaction looking at this is I wonder if we're going to see similar crowds to last season, because you do have high major exciting opponents on the schedule. They're just not in Columbus. And certainly next season, having UConn come to the Shot, I'm sure that will be a well-attended marquee game. We'll see what other games Ohio State's able to get on the schedule when it comes to a home from a home standpoint. But I foresee there being some tough sells when it comes to trying to get fans in the stands for, let's just say Marshall on Monday, November 9th, or Prairie View A&M on Monday, November 16th. Like, it's going to be some tough sells. But that's the schedule as it stands. Like I said, we don't have the Big Ten slate yet. I would imagine we'll get that in a month, maybe 2. That's as far as it goes at the moment. The Mississippi Valley State stuff really kind of threw me a little bit. It's tough, man. It's tough to be the last team in the KenPom rankings in multiple seasons. And of the non-conference wins in the last couple of years, there's a couple against non-Division I teams, but yeah, it's going to be an interesting one there right before the team presumably takes a break for the holiday. So having said all that, you can read more of my thoughts on the schedule and, look at an actual copy of the schedule over at dispatch.com. I've got all that stuff written and published and there for you to check out. Go take a look. Now, like I said, moving on, we've got a number of players planning visits to Columbus for the fall. Some of them coming up soon. Joshua Tyson, 4-star guard from Lakota West, who transferred to La Lu for his senior season. He will be visiting the last weekend of August. Dang Gore will be visiting on September 5th. We've talked about some of these on some of the recent episodes here. Gore will be let's see. So Gore is a 6'8", 200-pound power forward from Fort Erie, Ontario, Fort Erie International Academy, the number 80 prospect in the 24/7 Sports composite. So he's visiting September 5th. He's not the only person visiting that date. So there's a 6', 165-pound point guard, Jackson Davis from Kansas City Monarch Academy. He is the number 41 player in the 24/7 Sports composite for the 2027 class. He's also visiting that weekend. We talked in the last episode, Marcus Curry, MJ Curry, he's visiting. He'll be at Ohio State the weekend of October 10th. He's a 6'5", 175-pound shooting guard from Loganville, Georgia, the number 118 player in the 24/7 Sports composite, number 68 in the 24/7 Sports rankings. Antonio Pemberton will be visiting Ohio State from September 18th through the 20th. Over at 24/7 Sports. He's playing at Hanover, Massachusetts Masters Academy International. He's the number 38 national prospect. It's a 6'1", 165-pound point guard. DeMarcus Henry, who we're all familiar with, will be visiting the weekend of September 26th when the football team hosts Illinois. Jaron Holmes, and I don't know if it's Jaron or Garen. I have spoken with him and I've written about him, and he was very polite, but I don't know if it's Geren. He's a 6'5", 185-pound shooting guard who is the number 108 prospect in the 24/7 Sports composite and number 71 at 24/7 Sports. He will be visiting the weekend of November 7th. And that same weekend, Ohio State will also be hosting Brady Pettigrew, who is another combo guard from Bolingbrook, Illinois. He is in the 2028 class, but he is the number 14 prospect in the 24/7 Sports composite and a 5-star player in the 2028 class. So I'll start writing some stuff up here before long on these guys and who's coming when. But yeah, we're about 2 weeks from football games starting and Ohio State hosting players on campus, and it's going to get busy here real soon. So stay tuned for all that, because we're going to have plenty to talk about, plenty to discuss, and we'll see ultimately where Ohio State decides to go when it comes to this 2027 class. And that's all I've got for this episode. Wanted to get some thoughts out there about the schedule and update you on some of the guys that will be visiting. I'm sitting here at my desk right now, and pretty soon I got to run down to the bus. School has officially gotten underway in the Jardy house. First day with an empty house. It's been a very odd feeling sitting here and not having any of my people around. It's been tough. Those of you that either work from home or those of you that are around your kids all the time, I'm sure you can understand and relate. You are excited for them to start the year and ready to see all the adventures they're going to do. And, really, really can't wait to see all the things they accomplish this year. But it is so hard to just flip that page and be like, well, here goes the next school year. Something about just the hard deadline of yesterday was summer, today is not. Yesterday they weren't in this grade, today they officially are. It hits me every year. And especially I had a moment yesterday because they had different start dates. And I had a moment yesterday. I was in the basement, and that's where all their Legos are. And Owen had set up this whole Star Wars Lego battle on the floor. And I'm just looking at all these figures that are all posed for this battle that they're having, these clone troopers and the battle droids. And this was, it's just something about looking at that and just seeing them paused and thinking okay, well now they're paused and summer is over. And when is that battle going to get finished? And it feels like they get older immediately. I think that's the part that really gets me. So if you can relate, just know you're not alone. I feel you. We will get through this and everything will be fine, but I miss those guys. All right, as always, you can send along your questions, your comments, your love notes, your hate mail, and otherwise constructive criticism to me at Adam Jardy on Twitter or ajardydispatch.com. Thanks again for listening. Thanks to Patrick Flaherty, Podfather, for getting this out to you all. I'll be back with you soon. This will likely be the only podcast for the week, but until then, be kind, take care, and we'll talk soon.
Be sure and subscribe to the Buckeye Extra podcast in the iTunes Store, the Google Play Store, or on Stitcher.